Smackdown review. These are our pops and drops. Pop up, drop down. As always, I'm Will. That's Brandon. We're the Cousins of Destruction Wrestling Podcast. As always, let's cheers and talk about some wrestling, eh?
This is going to be a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting debates, to say the least, I think.
Hot start, hot end. Let's get right into it.
And a lot of stuff in the middle.
Yeah. Home, or SmackDown is at the home of WWE, so I don't know why I stuttered there. It's at Madison Square Garden this week, and then it is sold out. They have the mini set so that they can fit people behind the set, which is really, really cool to see. And it was jam-packed and loud to start off the show. They instantly start out with a Jacob Fatu video package from last week, just his overall debut. And then that's followed up with a good old SUV, blacked out SUV showing up to the stadium. And out comes the Bloodline. Everybody except Jacob Fatu. Mm-hmm. And it's Solo, and he walks up to Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman's like, respectfully, where is Jacob Fatu? I thought that's why we're here. And Solo just pats his shoulder. That's all he does. He's like, okay, Wiseman. Doesn't say a word and just walks straight out to the stage. They do the new cool camera angle where they just follow him, no cuts, and they walk through Gorilla. So it's Solo, Tama, and Tonga. And they go through the stage curtain, and then you can see on the mini set, which is kind of weird because you'd have to pay attention to the set because the screens are so small. Uh-huh. But on the mini set, you see them cutting back to the parking lot, and another SUV shows up, and this time it's the American Nightmare, and it's Randy Orton, and it's Kevin Owens, and they're pissed, and they're running right to the stadium. And I mean, they had planned, or they had advertised before the show that we were going to do like a Jacob Fatu anointment. Mm-hmm. So I thought, we're just going to start with that, which I guess might have been their plan here. But Cody and all of them storm out. They must have sprinted. They got there in like T-minus 10 seconds, not even. But they're now face to face. Orton, Cody, Kevin, Solo, Tama, and Tonga. And they're just stare down, Madison Square Garden going crazy, and brawl ensues. Yeah. Cody is attacking Solo. Orton is attacking Tonga. Kevin is attacking Loa. They're going at it. Randy and him are in the crowd. Solo and Cody stay kind of ringside in the ring. And then Kevin, he just goes in the crowd, beats the shit out of him, and then does a dolphin dive swanton bomb off the bleachers to Tongaloa through a table. If there's a high surface, Kevin Owens is jumping off of it, and you gotta love that kind of stuff.
It's like the modern day Jeff Hardy.
Yeah,
honestly,
it's literally, if there's a high surface, he's jumping right off of it. They kind of clear out the Bloodline, like they beat everybody,
which they seem to do.
They do every week. Uh-huh. So they're standing in the ring, and Kevin, or the Bloodline, is now on the stage, doing their hurt thing, looking at him, and they just kind of back up and walk out. They get the hell out of there. And Cody and Kevin and them, they're soaking it all in, crowd going wild, and they grab mics. And they grab a mic, and Kevin Owens starts off first, and he says, we're not waiting for Money in the Bank. And then Randy Orton is like, they go one by one, basically. Uh-huh. Yeah. So Kevin's like, we're not waiting for Money in the Bank. And then Randy's like, I've been dealing with this Bloodline for 3 years. They put me out of action for 18 months. Like, I'm so done with this shit. And Cody Rhodes is like, Bloodline looks at us, and they see 3 victims. I see 3 of the greatest of all time. Then he goes one by one and lists the other men's accomplishments. So he goes to Kevin Owens, then he looks at Randy Orton. He said, he gives Randy Orton, an 18-time overall champion and all this, gives him all the accolades. And he goes, I see a sold-out Madison Square Garden. This should be a night where I should be defending the title. And in that moment, Randy does give him a look. Mm-hmm. That the crowd, I didn't see it live, but online, Randy kind of went, title shot? But he goes, and instead, I am having to deal with this Bloodline stuff that I thought I finished at WrestleMania. Nick Aldis would then come out, because he's like, you're wrestlers on a wrestling show. You shouldn't be in this ring. And he brought a bunch of security. A bunch of security. A lot of security, like 8 guys, probably 4 future world champions right there. I don't know. Yeah. But they surround the ring. One jacked up security member decides, I'm going to get in the ring. I'm done waiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he gets in the ring. At that point, like, oh, here we go. This must be the one that can sell the best out of everybody. It I did. He did.
He did. He sold it.
He
Kevin hit him with I think they all hit their finisher on him. And if you go online, you look at the crossroads he took. Holy hell! Like a top 5 crossroads sell ever from this random guy. So
yeah,
all
and the
to him.
RKO was sold beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
Like I hate when the RKO when their knees always hit first. So I was like, man,
Yeah,
it's a random,
yeah.
it's a random security guard. Like, man, his knees are gonna hit
Oh.
first. That was my first thought, and then perfect.
You know, Triple H looked at him behind the scenes and was like, son, you're taking every finisher. This is your moment. And he was like, oh, I'm taking this. I'm taking everything I can. And I'm glad the crowd, the wrestling fans online saw it because a guy like that, like that's a small role. You deserve your flowers. So that's good. Anyway, they beat up everybody in security. And we go to commercial break with them just kind of like on top of the world yelling. And I mean, it's a normal commercial break. So that they must have just been sitting there for 4 minutes,
Just
like
yelling.
because we get back and they're still in the ring.
Yeah, that was only like 10 minutes into the show, too. It was like, kind of like a somewhat early-ish commercial break. And I was like, oh, okay. Something's about to happen. And no, it did not.
No,
it did not.
And Cody now has the mic again. And he basically says, he basically does his solo. You are not the head of the table. You are a clown in a chair, basically, is what he says. And then Nick Aldis comes out with like actual NYPD. And then that's when Cody and them draw the line. They're like, oh, we respect our boys in blue. We'll get out of the ring now. So they just get escorted out. They go all the way back to the car. Nick Aldis has sent them off for the rest of the episode. So this was a long, very hot, jam-packed opening segment. I mean, I have to give it a pop. That's just fun. That's wrestling.
Yeah. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give it a pop as well. I thought Cody did great on the mic when he addressed Solo, talking about you're not the head of the table, you're not the tribal chief, like all this stuff. I also, probably my favorite moment of it was when he's hyping up Randy and he calls him the Legend Killer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, we haven't heard that in so long. And he says it, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Dude, they need to bring back the Legend Killer.
I was like, as soon as he said that, I was like, that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to be the Legend Killer, and he's going to go after Cody. I was so excited with that.
Yeah, I love all this. When watching live and we're thinking about our pops and drops for each segment now. At this point, I now watch Raw and SmackDown and I think in my head, like, what am I going to say? And if what happened later in the show didn't happen, I would have actually maybe dropped this because, man, Jesus, the Bloodline just gets scared off every single episode. Like, that's how I feel about it. But we'll get into it later. But so I still didn't like seeing that so easily handled. Like there was not a second here where Cody and them looked to be reeling.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's by design.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially as we get into about later. And somebody pointed out, like, maybe Solo is meant to be like the disappointing Bloodline guy,
that was a good point.
Which was a very good point. Yeah. And you kind of see it again. And then as you get into it later, you're like, oh, okay. Well.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to our first match of the night, the women's qualifier for the Money in the Bank. And this was the big one. This was the one that I was kind of shaking on because we have been so Tiffany Stratton heavy with the Money in the Bank winning stuff.
Absolutely.
And so Tiffany Stratton versus Jade Cargill versus Candice LeRae. It was nice to see Candice LeRae, by the way. I like her. I like her. Anyway.
Makes one of us.
There was a theme to every qualifier match tonight that started right here. Candice and Tiffany did the smart thing. They were like, okay, Jade looks like a Greek goddess. We should probably team up and just take her out. So that's what they did to start the match. And they were doing well until Jade eventually, she got her I'm strong moment off.
Yeah, and Jade, before we get too much into the match, I just want to talk about the entrance. The entrance is still top tier. And then her ring gear that she had too, just $1 million this week. Usually it's always like, I'm always like, damn, like, she looks amazing. She looks the part. But this week I was like, okay.
She's badass. She's a badass all the way around. We had it was a nice showing for each individual here, especially like Candice LeRae. Candice LeRae got a good time. We had a bunch of spots. We had a Jade super kick, and she super kicked the shit out of Tiffany. Like it was one of those.
Like I'm gonna lose teeth.
Right. Like they replayed it because WWE when contact actually gets made, they love to just go, hey look replay, look it's real. So and she took a nice little kick to the face, and she immediately rolled out of the ring after it, and I thought that's because she actually got kicked, right? She needed a minute, but it was part of the spot because then Jade immediately military presses Candice LeRae and just chucks her at Tiffany on the side of the ring. And it's like, no one else in WWE except for maybe Bianca can do that. That's cool. Very shortly after that, though, Nia Jax comes out. And we're thinking, oh, here comes the BS3. But immediately after that, Jade or Bianca comes out too. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, you're not getting involved here. So we're getting no one's there for Candice LeRae. That was
my first thought. I was like, before we go to the commercial break, or right as we're going to commercial, I was like, well, there should be somebody there for Candice.
Yeah. If we come back from break, Tiffany and Candice LeRae are still teaming up, and they got the upper hand. LeRae then turns on Stratton, which was a nice thing to see. I definitely thought Stratton would turn in this situation. Tiffany did the floor routine corner spot where she does her acrobatics, and she
like China elbow thing.
The China elbow thing in the corner to both of them, and then Jade immediately turns around, puts them both in the corner, and does her like running splash. Misses on the second time though. She goes for Tiffany again, misses on the second time, rolls out of the ring. And Nia Jax now is like, oh, I have a moment because it's a triple threat match. There's no DQs. I can do something here. But Bianca's there. They get involved. Even though it's a no DQ match, the ref gets out of the ring and gets involved with the two outside participants who aren't a part of the match.
Yeah, you want to, I guess, limit it as much as possible.
The ref's like, hey, you listen here.
You can't do that.
And
Mike Chioda would never.
And Jade's on the outside looking at, like, oh, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, from behind, Indy Hartwell, speaking of somebody not being there for Candice LeRae, she throws Jade into the ring post, causing massive head damage, instant red in 2K. But this leads to Candice. So Candice and Tiffany are in the ring. This is the end spot. Candice would go for her moonsault, and it was reversed by Tiffany. Tiffany would immediately put her down, do the prettiest moonsault ever, her own moonsault. Tiffany Stratton wins, moves on to the Money in the Bank. This is all good stuff. I'm popping it.
Yeah, I'm going to pop it as well. Tiffany, I watched that moonsault back. She almost misses the top rope.
Yeah.
Like, it's very close on this one this week. She nails it. Perfect. Good match. Everybody, like you said, looked good in the match. Yeah. The indie stuff, I guess, it kind of makes sense, I guess. But for me, I could have probably done without all the Nia Bianca stuff. But I mean, also, you kind of want to get them on TV.
Yeah, it's all about how do we WWE. If Jade needs to lose a match, they just sit back and they go, how do we make her lose this without making her look bad at all? Like that's their thing right now. And eventually that will get old. Right.
Yeah.
But right now, given the circumstance and given the outcome of what we got, I was okay with it here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and like you said, it's all about how do you make her not look weak, and because it's gonna make that next one, or I guess the first one, whenever that does happen, it's gonna be huge. So I guess I understand it. I just more so with the triple threat stuff. Again, not a big triple threat fan, and the no DQ stuff. I'm always just like, But all in all, the right person won, and see what happens at Money in the Bank.
We got everybody that we won there. So,
yeah.
Couple backstage segments real quick. We won't pop or drop these, but I want to mention them. We had a Bayley and Naomi backstage thing where Bayley was kind of like, hey, you're going to win the Money in the Bank. And Naomi was like, yeah, I hope so. But you do know that if I win Money in the Bank, I got to cash it on you, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll cross that road when we get there. But Blair Davenport crashed their segment and was like, you know what? I'm going to win it, and your days are numbered, Bayley. Okay.
It happened, yeah.
Nick Aldis was very busy backstage. These managers lately, they've been having to be managers. I like it. But
it's nice to see an on-screen presence again with managers.
Yeah, and like in their office and stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So he's in his office and he lets out the fact that he sent Cody, Kevin, and Randy home for the night, which I thought, no way. But yeah,
usually when that happens, usually they circle back around.
Yeah. But so they've been kicked out. NYPD got him. American Nightmares convicted felon. I don't know. But the Street Profits show up and they talk about they want the Bloodline tonight. They're like, yeah, we didn't like what they did earlier, so we want them. And then Nick Aldis is like, no, we already had Bloodline drama tonight with Cody and them. I can't do all this right now. No. And then Pretty Deadly, they're back. They're sitting there and they're talking about they want to film their best Pretty Deadly movie ever here in Madison Square Garden. And the Street Profits are like, the only movie you should be filming is one where we kick your teeth in. And then Nick Aldis is like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So maybe next week we'll do that.
I forgot that had happened.
Yeah.
And then later on in the match, they're always like, next week on SmackDown. And they showed it. And I thought to myself, oh, why the hell is this happening?
Yeah.
Like, I still, more Street Profits is great.
Yes.
Some people love Pretty Deadly.
Street Profits, baby.
We haven't seen Pretty
Montez
Deadly
Ford,
and I don't know how long.
Yeah. I mean, we are very...
Try to build up the tag team division, but I also was just like, yeah. Okay.
We are very anti how they're doing the tag team division right now, especially on SmackDown. So, you know what? They're trying to build the tag team division. I'll give them a chance. We then would go to a Solo, Sikoa, and Paul Heyman segment. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down here, because I finally want to acknowledge it, commercials are killing me right now with Raw and SmackDown. I mean, the product is great, but these commercials that are just in the middle of entrances and a minute into the match, man, what are we doing?
Yeah, you'd think somehow, some way they'd work them out a little bit better, but it's we'll get to it later. But it was a rough night for production as a whole. Yeah, because this Solo and Paul segment came. The next match was supposed to be the Logan Paul Escobar Knight match. Escobar and Knight make their entrance, and then it's a commercial before the Paul entrance. But then we get a Solo and Paul segment before the Logan Paul. It just, the flow was
the flow was weird there. I didn't like it. Anyway, they're backstage and Paul is talking to Solo and he goes, Solo, let me be a wise man here. You have to let me know what's going on. He goes, he was like, first off, Cody and them have now been removed from Madison Square Garden. We don't have to worry about them anymore. Second, all I need to know now is, what are we doing here tonight, and where is Jacob Fatu? And Solo said, you know what? I listened to my wise man. And you said he was too dangerous, so he is not here tonight. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to anoint you as my wise man. And I'm going, oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah, I was... Sometimes with these segments are always like, man, that's kind of not needed, as we talked about with like the Bailey, Naomi, Blair Davenport thing. This was really nice, a little nugget. I thought it was very smart of WWE for Solo to be like, you know what, Paul? Yeah, I did trust you. Yeah. And so I thought that was really nice. I was very happy with Solo on SmackDown as a whole.
Yeah, me too. We then move on to the Money in the Bank qualifying match. Logan Paul, Santos Escobar, and Logan Paul. And LA Knight.
Oh, are you Carmelo Hayes? Logan Paul's gonna fight Logan Paul.
Logan Paul, huh? If you only way he'd fight is if we look in a mirror. LA Knight, Logan Paul, Santos Escobar. Logan Paul came out in some nice red, white, and blue. He was looking good, but he also came out with a microphone. And he was like, MSG, the place where legends are born, the place where Logan Paul will now fight, and I won't be here alone. He brings back I'm gonna bring somebody who's used to winning in this stadium. And he brings out Tyrese Halliburton, who was at Raw Monday. So,
I guess they're selling a shirt too. And
but on the way to the ring, the camera pans and Jalen Brunson's there. The New York Knick, that's their boy. That's their Patty Mahomes right now. So, he's front row, so we know something's coming there. LA Knight would come out very hot here. He's obviously been wanting to get his hands on Logan Paul for a while now, and he did. So he started the match off just beating everybody's ass. And last week, Escobar tried to attack him, so he kind of has a reason to be pissed at everybody here. But this was very good. Because of that, the theme of the night, Escobar and Paul would team up on LA Knight. They'd start beating up LA Knight. And they would do this funny thing where they would do one move, and then they look at the other guy like, yeah, see, I did a lot of damage there. And then the other guy would come and do a move and be like, no, see, that was more damage. It was kind of funny. But we would end up with Logan Paul versus LA Knight in the middle of the match. They would each get the best of each other once, so very back and forth. Logan Paul would do a suicide dive out of the ring and hit LA Knight, and then Santos Escobar would be right behind him and do a suicide dive into Logan Paul. That was some really good stuff. We did a top rope Hurricane Rana from Santos Escobar to LA Knight. Logan Paul did a powerbomb splash to Escobar into Knight, which was really cool. Yeah. I put down here that just all these guys look great here. Like LA Knight has really improved in the ring, at least here it looks so. Logan Paul has the problems that we all talk about, not showing up enough, not fighting enough. But when he gets in the ring, It's great. Santos Escobar is in this match for a reason because he's good at what he does.
Yeah, Logan Paul specifically, we complain about him not showing up. But when that bell rings, I forget about
dude,
that.
he's so
I'm
good.
just like, my eyes are drawn to it. LA Knight, as like you said, he's improved. And with triple threats, you can kind of hide a little bit here and there, which was nice. Like you said, everybody looked good here. And I mean, even Santos Escobar, I was like, okay. Like, I enjoyed seeing him. I thought he was going to win the match, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Me too. They would all, or LA Knight and Santos Escobar would each hit a finisher here. And Logan would stop it, and he would look at Santos Escobar, and he'd give him a good old Hak Tua. He did it, and he went viral for it. Damn it.
Well,
they would then
it's a good time to wear the hat, I guess.
Yeah,
huh?
Logan Paul was on the top rope trying to mess with Santos Escobar. Santos Escobar was the one ringside on the rope. So if they're on the top rope, Santos Escobar back is facing the ring. And LA Knight would do his jump up, and he did it perfectly this time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he does it, I go, ooh, did it perfectly this time. And he did a belly to back suplex off the top rope to Santos Escobar. And then Logan Paul would do a swanton bomb to LA Knight laying there. 1, 2, ooh, from the crowd. Very, very cool. Then the effery happened. He didn't get the 3, so he looked out. My boy Tyrese Halliburton's out there, and he's like, Tyrese, bring him out. And what happens? Tyrese has good old brass knuckles in his hand. He never goes anywhere without the brass knuckles.
Mm-hmm.
But on the way to the ring, Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, Jalen Brunson just hops the barricade.
Yep, security ain't there.
Nope.
They're all dealing with Cody and Kevin and them, I guess. But they kind of just do a stare off.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little weird. You can tell that they wanted these guys there for the pops that they would get, but they weren't doing anything physical. Like that wouldn't happen.
I'm sure there was in the talks like, yeah, we'll be there, but we're not gonna do anything,
Then the end spot came. So we had Logan Paul was in the corner because he was trying to deal with the Jalen Brunson stuff. Escobar would do a running double knee to him, which would roll Logan out, I think. BFT to Escobar from LA Knight, but Logan Paul would get back in the ring, would try to do a roll up on LA Knight. LA Knight would reverse the roll up into his own roll up. He hit the bar in 2K. Hit that bar in 2K.
Yellow bar.
LA Knight gets the roll up pin on Logan Paul. LA Knight is going to Money in the Bank. This was shocking. Just because I thought that their U.S. title match would come up, but this was great. Pop.
Yeah, I'll pop it as well. I definitely thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, Santos Escobar is going to win this. Obviously, LA Knight's going to be in the Money in the Bank match, and Logan Paul's going to somewhat cost him.
I have a question here. So, so on that note, given who's in Money in the Bank, we're going to have a lot of run-ins and a lot of storylines going on during that match. Like, I have no idea who wins it.
At this point, I don't know. Like, it's really one of those, obviously Jay is the favorite, but there's a lot that could happen with that maybe he doesn't.
Chad's in it, so you have the Howdy stuff going on. I mean, is Howdy going to get involved? Are the lights going to go out and Chad Gable is going to be dead in the center of the ring?
Or is Chad Gable going to be at the top of the ladder? Or is Howdy going to go after Jay because the Fireflies?
After Jay. Is Logan Paul going to run in and screw LA Knight out of it? Like, there's just so much good stuff going on with that match. I think it has potential to be the best Money in the Bank match ever. I mean, it's gonna be good.
There's definitely a lot more storylines in this one than I can remember there being. Typically, you throw people in Money in the Bank that don't really have anything to do.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, Kane, Edge, Mysterio, get out there and just do cool stuff. And like, okay, cool, we'll do that.
Jump off that ladder.
Yeah. Sin Cara, take this bump through the ladder.
I did, Sin Cara. Sin Cara number 4. I did want to point out there was a little bit afterward. Tyrese and Logan looked like they were going to attack LA Knight, but Jalen Brunson got in the ring with a chair. But again, obviously no physical contact in their contract with this stuff because they just did a stare off. It was nice. Like the home crowd. MSG was going wild for Jalen. We were there at Raw a few months ago and they had Patrick Mahomes there. Same kind of deal. Mm-hmm. We loved it.
Yeah, it just adds to the product. Yeah. And admittedly, when WWE gets athletes like this, I'm always like, man, WWE is so back.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cool again. You know what I mean?
They brought out a bunch of stars for the MSG. I mean, it was packed in there, man. It was packed, and it was great to see. I love a sold out arena for WWE. It just feels good. There was like 19,000 people there.
Especially like a Madison Square Garden. That's kind of like an old school, like historic. We always used to pack this place. Yeah. Yeah, if it's, somewhere
it's like Drake packs Madison Square Garden. Like people like that packs Madison Square Garden. And when you see WWE do it, you're like, okay, they still got it. Like this is still good. We got a couple of smaller segments here. Baron Corbin's on my TV with Apollo Crews.
I'm a Baron Corbin fan. I like it.
You know what? I'm with him. And him and Apollo Crews are just bantering. They're bullshitting. And then Carmelo Hayes walks in and he goes, guys, I need your advice. I need your advice on what my shirt should say when I win the Money in the Bank. Right now, I want it to say Mello in the Bank, but I feel like that's too predictable. And Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews are like, there's a bunch of other people in this match, bro. You might not win.
Yeah.
And then Mello's like, people should put their money on me. That's what he said. And he walked away. So
I will say that Baron Corbin said something along the lines of like, oh, look, it's Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
And then Carmelo Hayes came back with like, no, I've actually won like a title before. And I was like,
oh. Yeah, that was good.
He's just catching strays for no reason.
Yeah. We did do a nice little tribute to Sika. Rest in peace. I don't really have more to say on that. It's unfortunate. They did a really good job with their video package. It was very nice. They pointed out how he should be proud to be Roman Reigns' father. Like that family's obviously done more for WWE than any family's done for any business in the history of businesses. I mean, they just supply WWE with top level stars.
For generations.
For generations and generations.
I mean, and somebody's going to say the McMahon family, but that when you're like the biggest family to ever, but I would honestly put this family up.
The McMahons are nothing without The Rock. The McMahons are nothing without Roman Reigns right now. So, then we got an Andrade Money in the Bank video package, which not much to say there. They just, yep.
So a few weeks ago, I like them when they do their promos like before matches. The whole like Money in the Bank, like I'm gonna win the Money in the Bank. I didn't really like it. It didn't like connect with me, mostly because I'm like, well, Andrade's not winning this.
Yeah.
So I just wasted my time for like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't care. Whatever.
I just was like, okay, when is it in? So I can get to the next part.
The women are back out. Women's Money in the Bank qualifier match. Blair Davenport versus Naomi versus Indy Hartwell. And I was thinking, wow, this is a very obvious winner in my head. And WWE didn't disappoint. The theme of the night. Team up right away. Indy Hartwell and Blair Davenport. They're like, we don't like Naomi. Let's beat her up. Except this time, Naomi doesn't take any of their shit. She just immediately dispels both of them. They try to do double tag team move to her, and she just throws them away, throws them out of the ring. There are a couple good spots here. Indy would pick up Naomi in a powerbomb position and use her as a weapon. And she hit Blair a couple times with her, and then a big old powerbomb. There was they go on the outside of the ring, and Blair did this nice little jump off double stomp to Indy's back off the steel steps, which was pretty cool.
And right before that, I think it was her, just destroyed Naomi.
Yeah.
Like Naomi took a nasty looking bump.
Yeah. The problem was very quickly, Fox had a huge trouble yesterday with their video.
Well, yeah, because it's got to get censored.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they were losing. I mean, black screen a lot.
Yeah, because of the censorship. Like,
Oh.
you got to censor it because you can't have the cussing or anything. So in the crowd,
I don't know what was going on though. They need to figure something different out because I can't be looking at black screen on my like.
That's why it's going to Netflix.
Yeah, it sucks. Okay. Naomi would do a comeback. She would get her comeback going. She would do the jumping splits where she does the splits and lands on them. She would do it to both girls, which is impressive here. And Indy would do this cool spot where she would spine buster Naomi and then take Candice LeRae and spine buster her on top of Naomi. And I was like, that is cool. Indy's cool. Make her look good here.
Yeah.
Then, not Candice LeRae on that one. Blair Davenport, sorry. Jade would then come out after this because Indy she's on a roll here. Jade, obviously, earlier was screwed by an Indy, so this makes sense. Jade would come out. She attacks Indy, pushes her up against the ring post, kind of does the exact same thing that she did, right? Naomi would then just do her finish to Indy because, Naomi wins. So Naomi wins the Queen of the Ring qualifier match here.
Money in the Bank.
Whatever.
He's struggling on this one, I tell you.
I am working my way through it. I was struggling to watch this match and I'm struggling to call the match afterward. I'm gonna give this one a drop. I didn't think the match was great. I liked the time that they gave to Indy, but Blair has been doing some backstage segments as of the last few weeks, and she really didn't get any light here. Like, she hasn't come out looking any better here. Yeah, I just wasn't interested. Wasn't for me. This wasn't for me. I'm dropping it.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop it as well. For me, I'm dropping it because it's the match that is right before the main segment. We didn't have very many matches on SmackDown as a whole. This one was easily the worst one for me.
Yeah.
It took the air out of the building.
Yeah.
Like, you could really just tell that the crowd was just like, okay, like, what are we doing here? What are we getting to? And Naomi was going to be the clear winner. I mean, makes sense. It's Naomi. They're going to put her in the Money in the Bank match. Good for her. But just overall, I was like, man, this is just dragging on.
It just didn't have a star in it that I personally cared about, like, what would happen to them here.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like every one of the qualifying matches so far, at least that I can remember off the top of my head, there's at least been one superstar in it where I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. I wonder what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
this one just didn't have it for me, so I was just like, eh.
Yeah, and not only that, it's the only one that didn't have like any storyline.
Yeah,
really either. I mean, you set up a backstage promo with Davenport and Naomi earlier in the night, and you're like, oh, here you go, and the Indies got the Jade stuff, but it's like, I mean, okay, that's just like a one-off. That's not going to continue. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I agree. Then we go to your favorites in the back, DIY.
Huh?
They're sitting there, they're chilling, and they're talking about strategy for their match next week, because next week on SmackDown we are getting a tag title match between DIY and A-Town Down Under. So all in all, I mean, that will be cool.
It's going to be a very tag team centered episode, I guess, next week.
Yeah, it is. I guess Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, they just travel separately, because Austin Theory stumbles in without Grayson Waller, and
it's weird to not see the tag teams together.
And he's like, I don't know why you guys are talking strategy. You guys aren't gonna win. And then Gargano jumped. They were sitting on one of like the moving boxes, and Gargano jumps off, and the camera angle was so zoomed in on Theory and them sitting on the box that when he jumped off, you could like see his forehead. He's a little dude, and so the camera had to like reset lower. I just thought that was freaking hilarious. I cracked up in person, but he starts going on. He's like Waller doesn't care about you, dude. They're trying to do the split up, and but before Austin can really talk or give his 2 cents about it, Grayson Waller from the back, he comes and attacks DIY.
Smart move.
Austin Theory then just kind of pulls Grayson Waller off, and they leave. I don't really. Do we need to pop or drop that?
I mean, we can.
We can, I guess. If you look at it, it's setting up a tag team match, championship match for next week. Grayson Waller is going crazy. I mean, sure, I'll give this a pop just because.
I'm dropping it.
Yeah.
I'm dropping it. We talk about the tag team division, and as much as I'm like, man, DIY is going to win the belts because I feel like it's a foregone conclusion at this point, I realized at this point when Gargano jumps up and is like, what do you mean? You don't have to, you don't trust him, blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, oh. I don't care. Like, I was just like, I really just don't.
The match is going to be good.
Match is going to be great.
Yeah.
In terms of, you think about like long term after that, okay, they get the belts and then what? Like, who do they fight then? Why should I care about them at that point? It's just kind of like, kind of just falls a little flat for me.
Yeah, because I think Jade and Bianca are fighting Indy and Candace too. So it's tag team.
And maybe they do that tag team because you take people that aren't on the Money in the Bank card. Yes. You rest up, obviously, all
because they're going next day. They're going next day. So we then would get our final and main segment, the gold of the night. It was just, I loved it. I loved every little piece of it. So Solo is anointing Paul Heyman as his wise man. Heyman and all of them would come out, and we were watching. I was watching with a couple friends were actually over, and my fiance was sitting here, and she goes, Paul Heyman looks like shit, and he has let his gray come into his hair. He hasn't shaved, so he has this like Homer Simpson-esque gray beard thing going on. Yeah. He looks terrible and it's fitting his torture that he's going through. He does it like no one else.
It's so just, it's little things like that.
It is.
It's little, and when other people that aren't like super hardcore wrestling fans can pick up on that, that's like, when you know.
Exactly. They're like, why is this guy crying? And I'm like, because he's so good at his job. That's why. Heyman would get in the ring and he would do the I'm Paul Heyman, blah, 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 and he would begin to speak, and Solo would put his hand out. And he'd be like, just give me the mic. Give me the mic. Paul Heyman would give him the mic, and Solo would kind of betray Paul here and be like, I want to introduce the werewolf of the bloodline, Jacob Fatu. And Paul Heyman lean back on the rope and just does this. But holy shit, Jacob Fatu's entrance is sick. They're giving him the cane fire.
They gave him pretty much.
Oh.
From what I understand, have seen, it's pretty much like everything that he's had before.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so cool when they keep somebody's entrance like that. Like you're familiar with them from outside WWE. And you're like, no, we're keeping everything the same. It's going to be badass.
Yeah. So very quick thing here. I'm looking at my watch when it's happening. SmackDown ends at 9 here, Central, right? It's 8:50. Jacob Fatu just came out. Commercial break. I was like, what are we doing?
Got to get one more in, I guess.
I was like, what are we doing? But whatever. We already went on a tangent. Solo goes, he does it. He goes, Madison Square Garden, acknowledge me. Yeah. And I mean, the crowd is hot and booing the shit out of it. And Paul Heyman is disgusted. His mouth is dropped. He is starting to tear up a little bit. He is just like, what have you done? He then goes one by one to Tama and Tonga and Jacob, and he asks for them to acknowledge him. And they each say, I love you in some form, and that I acknowledge you.
The Jacob one, I was very surprised, I guess, would be. I was like, I thought, like, God, there's no way. And he just, right in line, you know?
No, I love you. I acknowledge you. He sounded crazy, though, which is great. Then he would look at Paul. Crowd at this point is almost silent because everybody is just like on their feet, like, I have no idea what's about to happen, because we didn't know if there was a big return happening. We didn't know what was going to go on. He walks up and he goes, Paul Heyman, my wise man, acknowledge me. And Paul at this point is crying, and Solo pulls out the
lei
the red lei that Paul used to put on Roman Reigns when he would acknowledge him. And Paul is shaking and he's crying, and Paul goes, Solo, I love you, and I acknowledge that you are not my tribal chief. And the crowd goes insane. The crowd goes insane. And Paul is crying now. The tears are rolling down his face. I mean, he looks like a guy who is on his deathbed and just relieved that he finally got out his last breath. And they kicked the shit out of him.
Yeah. They were trying to make you pay for that, Paul.
They make him pay for it. Solo immediately spikes him, gives him the spike. They have this man, Jacob Fatu, do a diving top rope headbutt to the goddamn man, eats it. Not over yet. They drag Paul Heyman out of the ring.
His lifeless body.
This walrus. They're just dragging him out of the ring. And they do the shield power bomb through a table. This was absolutely insane. They all throw up the one afterward. Paul Heyman takes the bumps, does the job. This was as good as it gets from a manager. Paul Heyman is the GOAT. Pops all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of have to pop this one, I feel like. I guess a couple different trains of thought here. The first one, for me at least, was, I was heading over here to record and I was thinking about it. And then I was like, well, that just proves to me that Solo's not going to win the belt.
Yeah.
Because he took what's more important than the belt, probably.
Yes.
Paul Heyman.
Yep.
And then secondly, and probably, more importantly, we talk about how do you get the bloodline kind of rejuvenated? How do you inject some life into them? Like, this was it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what they needed. And I felt like for the first time in a while, I was like, okay, like I can take these guys seriously. I'm actually excited on what they do now. Now I'm excited to see like what happens next time they're on screen.
Yeah. Obviously, we were criticized this week for the take on, what is what is this last ditch effort at that WWE can give to give these guys some life? And, the idea I have is like, screw it, just put the belt on Solo for a week, give them a reason. This was every reason that you need to take this bloodline seriously. Roman is going to come back for the wise men, and he is going to come back with a vengeance. A little bit of me is like, so they're keeping Solo at the head of this bloodline table now for the foreseeable future. Like I was thinking maybe we get a Rock return or something, and he kind of cements himself as the head of this. So I'm looking forward as to like how the downfall of Solo goes in that aspect, because the rumor has always been Rock versus Reigns in Bloodline versus Bloodline, but I wonder if that's just kind of out until Rumble, and we do get a Solo versus Roman Bloodline at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the way they go, and I think eventually. So I guess the way that I would think about it maybe is one by one. Maybe you have Jimmy come back, or maybe you have all these other guys come back, and this Bloodline just destroys all of them as well. And then you have Roman come back and even the odds up a little bit, and then further down the line, maybe The Rock comes in and maybe takes over that Solo job. Like maybe you give Reigns a win eventually, and then The Rock's like, okay, Solo, you failed at this, like let me take it over.
I am truly the final boss, in this
let me do it. Let me show you how to do it.
Last thing that I'll say on all this, as much of life as this gives this new Bloodline, I'm worried about what they're gonna do on the mic without Paul Heyman for the foreseeable short-term future. Yep. Paul Heyman is the money on that mic with Solo. So this is WWE is officially saying, man, step up. It's your turn to bat, man. It's your turn to bat, because Paul is obviously going to be written off TV for a while, and he deserves every second of it.
Yeah, and that's a very fair point to make. I mean, Solo, I thought, did a really good job this week, but not all weeks are like that. I know Jacob Fatu can also talk on the mic, but you also kind of don't want him to, at least for me, I don't want him to, because he's kind of like that crazy guy, and you don't need him to. He can just be crazy guy. But maybe Solo's been practicing. I hope so, because they're going to kind of need it a little bit.
They are. Anyway, what did you guys think about the episode of SmackDown this week? We thought it was great. It was another pop for us. So let us know in the comments. Other than that, follow us on all socials at COD WrestlePod, COD WrestlePod, and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts at Spotify, Apple, etc. And share us with whoever you may think would love this content, because we love the interaction. Anyway, I'm Will. That's Brandon. We're the Cousins of Destruction Wrestling Podcast, and we will see you next time.